Welcome to Withdraw Consent. I'm Jack. A common thing you hear is, would you have joined the Nazis or stood up against them? I just heard Jimmy Dore say that the other day. And he does this thing where, like, you'd like to think that you'd stand up against the Nazis, but look, you would just go with the lockdowns or something like that, because he thinks the COVID-19 lockdowns or something particularly Nazi-esque, I don't know what the logic is there. But anyways, so then I got to thinking when I heard that, well, because you hear it all the time, but I got to thinking, and I'm like, let's really break this down, So I was doing this fun thought experiment in my head, so I just want to pitch it to you. But I'm going to pitch it to you from an American perspective because I'm an American. So I'm going to give you some ridiculous examples, but I want to do two different scenarios. I don't want to do, if you were in Germany, would you have become a collaborator or Nazi? What I want to do is, if you were in France, in occupied France, would you have collaborated? What would that situation look like, right? And then I want to do another scenario that's completely different. And if it's in, say you were in previously Soviet occupied, say Ukraine or Eastern Poland, would you have collaborated with the Nazis? Because we just did the Einsatzgruppen report very recently, last week, I believe. And so I never figure out when they're going to get published. Okay, so let's do the France one, right? So say you're in America and there's all types of, communist fifth columns and stuff, like what happened in France, right? But say the United States is destabilized, and I know this is absolutely ridiculous, but imagine Canada's full of Nazis, right? And then they invade the United States, and they're just conquering because it just doesn't make any sense, right? But just say that this happens, right? And say at the end, the South surrenders. The South is all that's left. So you got, Florida, Arkansas, South Carolina, stuff like that, over there. And then they all surrender and say, we'll collaborate with you. So this is the Vichy government in southern France, right? And so then they say, okay, here's what we're going to do with your country, right? We're going to say no gay stuff, no trans and kids. We're going to say no interest is allowed. We're going to say, all these things. And it's like, okay, so say you live in the South, we'll just say, okay? Because if you're in the North, you kind of more have to comply, we'll say, because there's Nazis around, Canadian Nazis. But like in the South, would you comply? And then they're like, hey, just point to where the person's hiding that wrote the book that has pornography in it that's made for children to watch, for children to read in school, right? Just point to the teacher who gave the book to the child. Point us out the teacher who talked to the 6-year-old and said, you're not really a boy, you're a girl. You know what I mean? Report them to us. Would you help them? Would you collaborate? Right? And so I understand that even giving this scenario to you and just pitching it to you like this, Jimmy Dore would still say no. And then the reason why he wouldn't is because he would say, yeah, sure, transing the kids stuff's bad, but it's okay for the homosexuality stuff. So what he's going to say is that they're dumping pollutants in the river, in the lake up here. But he wants to wait till it's flowing down the river and try to put a filtration system in to protect the kids from being trans, But you've got an underlying problem, and it's up in the lake. You need to go stop the pollution from being put into the lake, and then the river will naturally fix itself. So anyways, or you could fix it, and it just wouldn't keep occurring. So I understand that. So basically, in the second scenario, we're going to do, like, say you lived in Eastern Poland, okay? So Germany captures Western Poland, and the Soviets capture Eastern Poland. So imagine the exact same thing happens with Canadian Nazis coming from the north. But in the second scenario, there's communist Mexico captures the southwest of the United States. Okay. So now you're in this scenario where you're in Phoenix, we'll say, right? That's where you live. And the commies come in and they drag off the pastors, they drag off patriots, anybody who's anti-communist, anybody who's spoken out at teachers' meetings against transing kids, they drag them off to prison and this and that, right? And then eventually the Nazis come, right? Eventually a war starts between the Canadian Nazis, who now control most of the United States, and the communist Mexicans, right? And then all of a sudden you're liberated by the Nazis, and the Nazis say, hey, point us out the people in the population. So in the historical example, it would be Jews. In this example, it doesn't have to be Jews because we're talking about America. It doesn't have to be. It could be also. So, but in our example of America, it could just be like, far left teachers, or it could be whoever we're like telling on people and getting people rounded up. And they say, hey, just point us out those people who took the pastor to jail, or who informed on the pastor, who then went to jail and was tortured or killed. Point out the people who got the anti-communist arrests and stuff like that. Would you do it? See, it's funny here because it's everything good you could think of that would happen, like the no interest thing, you know. In these scenarios, like in the Soviet scenario, they would be rounding up the people who were anti-interest, you know. But then when the Nazis come, the Nazis would be rounding up the people who are pro-interest. I mean, if you're just a halfway decent human being, you're anti-interest, right? Interest being charged on debt, usury, right? Now, the only people who are interested in charging interest, forgive me there, but are the bankers, literal bankers. I'm not using a code word here, just literally bankers, you know, or the car people who have their own financing and then make their credit off that, or the furniture store that has its own financing because they're making mass money off the interest. So a very small part of the population, and it's just a moral issue, basically. So they're absurd examples, but they're kind of equivalent, you know? And I think it's just interesting to think about the scenario, because when I was making those Einsatzgruppen videos and I was researching that, I was like, man, I'm on board. If I was the we did that one Einsatzgruppen report, and I erroneously in the video said, I don't know if I said Polish or Ukrainian, but it was actually Lithuanian. Lithuanians were doing the pogrom. It literally said it on the screen. I just read it wrong. I don't know. Anyways, so, and you were these Lithuanians, and then all of a sudden the Nazis come and they liberate you from the Soviets, and then you look around and you know all the people who informed. You know who got that guy's kid killed. You know who got that guy's father killed, right? And then they just do these pogroms. It's like they were saying, like 2,500 people. Yeah, I understand it. If I'm the population, not only am I collaborating, but I'm joining in. You know, because there's just right and there's wrong. This is my opinion. It's morality based. I just think it's an interesting thing to look at. So I just want to pitch it to y'all. I think it's pretty interesting. Okay, so coming up on Wednesday, I'm going to do another episode in the Holocaust series. I know I've done a lot recently. This will be number 12. And I'm talking about the motivation, because we get a ton of comments saying, but what's their motive? There's tons of motives. And Victor and I ran them all down. And basically, I'm just going to run them down to you. It's fascinating stuff. And on Thursday, we're going to talk about how to make an argument to a Christian Zionist, because there's a big problem in America, that they shouldn't really be supporting Israel or Zionism, we'll say. Anyways, that's what's coming up, and hope to see you next time.